the honor of introducing our guest speaker this morning. But before I do, look, Guy is, if you haven't had an opportunity to meet him already this weekend, want to encourage you, bombard him at the end of service, all right? Get to know him. He's a great guy, but I got to be honest with you, all right? You're going to like him no matter what, all right? But you're going to really like him all the more because of his wife, all right? I'm just telling you the truth here. So before I go further to introduce him, I'm going to have both of them stand up so you can see him next to his amazing wife, Laura, right here. You know, it's been a great weekend, and Randy had already shared a little bit, but it's just been awesome. And I know Guy will share a little bit, but it's just been an honor to have both Guy and Laura here to teach us, to encourage us, to help us in our ministry here at Campus View. I wanted to read a passage in my introduction here in 2 Corinthians chapter 11. It says beginning in verse 26, it says, I have been constantly on the move. I have been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my fellow Jews, and in danger from Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, and in danger from false believers. I have labored and toiled, and I have often gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst and have often gone without food. I have been cold and naked. Besides everything else, I face daily the pressure of my concern for all the churches. Who is weak, and I do not feel weak? Who is led into sin, and I do not inwardly burn? You know, Paul, really shows his heart and his love and his concern and his, just everything he feels for his brothers and churches all over the known world at that time. And he feels the pressure, and he feels this, this gift that God has given him, this insight, this knowledge of how he can help the churches. And God has done something similarly, I believe, with Guy, to really help churches, and not just in the United States of America, not just in Canada, where he's from, by the way, but all around the world. And they travel all around the world, and really their hearts are to help our churches in a particular area, to help understand, help learn how to grow, so that we can be better in our communities in outreach and really seeking and saving the lost. And so I have the honor of introducing this man who's going to come up and preach the word, and I know you will, but let's show him our love and encouragement this morning. Amen. Guy Hammond.
Amen, bro. Thank you. Wow, thank you so much. Really, really honored to be here. Thank you so much for your kindness, your hospitality. We've just loved our time here at Campus View and in Gainesville. First time I've ever been to Gainesville. I'm thinking, what took me so long? You've got a great town here and a wonderful and amazing church, and we just feel the love, and we're so grateful for you inviting us. And I certainly appreciate the faith and the courage of your senior leadership, your eldership, your evangelists, to say, hey, let's talk about these complicated, complex, multifaceted, countercultural issues on LGBTQ plus things. You know what? I'm so glad that we did yesterday and on Friday night, because here's the thing. The whole world is talking about it. But often, a lot of times, Jesus' church is not. And it's not because we don't care. We're a caring group of people. We do care. We love people. But the subject is so controversial. We don't want to spend all of our time fighting and arguing with people. We don't want to put our foot in their mouth. We don't want to look dumb. We don't want to offend anybody. So a lot of Christians are like, you know what? Probably when it comes to LGBTQ plus issues and reaching out to people from that community, I'm probably just going to skip that one over because, I just don't want too much of a hassle, and I'm not sure what to say. The trouble with that is that then there's a whole demographic of the world's population that a lot of Christians are just ignoring. Again, not because we don't care, but because we're not sure what to say or do here. And so that's why I've been here for the last 2 to 3 days, talking about this, hopefully giving you bridge-building language so that you know what to say, what works, what doesn't, what kind of heart and attitude should we have towards gay, transgender, lesbian people as we share the good news of Jesus with people in the hopes that everybody has access to the cross and know the amazing love that God has for them all. So that's what we've been doing, and it's been such a real honor and privilege to do so. I've got some books that I've written. I brought 4 of them here with me. A couple of them are sold out, but we still have some more here. And if you want to avail yourself to our materials, this is great educational stuff. Like if you're thinking, I've never studied the Bible with anybody who's gay before, I don't know. If you haven't, you're going to. Or if you're like, I don't know anybody who's gay, then you're clued out because you absolutely do. And if you think you don't. But, you know, these are educational tools for you to go, okay, now I know what to say. I always wondered what to say. Now I know. And so I really hope you'll avail yourself to them. This book here, Return to Sender, is actually a book that I wrote. It's not about homosexuality, but it's really just about helping anybody. If you've been like, man, I've made so many mistakes. I've screwed so many things up. I don't know if I can come back from some of this stuff. Then that book is for you, because it's a book full of hope, of stories of people who've gone on and done incredible things for God, even though they completely messed their lives up. And that book will give you a lot of practical guidelines and tips on how to recover and get over some of the worst mistakes of your life. The other 2 books that I would point you towards that's available today is this one here, Gay and Christian, which is my latest book, and it's taking apart the top arguments of pro-gay apologists and gay-affirming churches that say that homosexuality is okay for the Christian. Of course, I'm not talking about homosexual attraction. I'm homosexually attracted. That's why I'm here. I lived a gay life until I was 24 years old. I had a boyfriend for 10 years, was heavily involved in the gay community. Then somebody invited me to church where I learned what it meant to follow Jesus. And I finally decided, like Matt just did, that I wanted Jesus more than I wanted, my sinful life. And so in 1987, I was baptized. I became a Christian. And I left my gay life behind forever. I've not participated in any kind of homosexual activity since my conversion 35 years ago. But here's the thing. I'm still homosexually attracted. Hasn't even changed. I don't know why. If I was God, I would do things very differently. I would have, changed all that. But for whatever reason, God has said to me, Guy, my grace is sufficient for you, and my power is made perfect in weakness. And so he's kind of left me with this struggle in life. And so I've just done the best I can to recognize that Jesus is my identity, not what I'm attracted to. And I do the best I can to honor God with my life every single day. And he's really blessed me. And so I've learned a lot over the years, and I've got deep convictions on the traditional biblical sexual ethic. And I completely disagree with these notions that is being taught today widely in our world, that you can, as a Christian, embrace and celebrate homosexuality. There's a lot of arguments proving that point, but I wrote this book, Gay and Christian, to say, here's why they're wrong, here's what you need to know, and here's how you need to prepare yourself to have these conversations with people who think that you can be gay and a Christian. And then there's this book here, Tempt Away, How to Defeat Every Temptation in Under 60 Seconds. And I know, right? And I mentioned that book because this is actually what I'm going to take today's lesson from that book. I recognized several years ago, I thought, I'm just kind of giving in to temptation a lot. Like, I really didn't have a plan. There was no strategy. I was just kind of living my life. But when temptation came in various forms, I just was so often giving in, and I thought, I've got to do better than this. Like, I've got to come up with a plan or something, a strategy that I can easily employ, that's quick, and will work. And so I came up with just a little plan. It was just me. I wasn't telling anybody about it. It was just a 4-step plan. And I recognized that when I implemented these 4 steps, most often I was able to overcome pretty much every temptation, most often within 30 seconds, 45 seconds. And it was really working well for me. And then I was at an event. I was speaking to the Boston church several years ago, and I was telling them about this little plan that I had. And one of the elders said, you know a plan on how to defeat all your temptations in under 60 seconds? I said, yeah, it works really well. He goes, you're serious? I said, yeah. He goes, well, you should write a book about that because everybody wants to know how to defeat every temptation in under 60 seconds. I was like, okay, great. So that's the book. So we don't actually have many copies left. I think there's maybe 10 or 15 left. But please, rush out there, push people aside, get to the book table, get one. If you can't get one here today, that's fine. You can get them online at Amazon and whatnot. That's all right. But that one, certainly return to sender, and the Gay and Christian, we've got those here. Please, I'm moving on to Orlando and then Louisville next. Please don't make me have to take these things on a plane to Louisville. I don't want to do that. They got their own books coming at that event. So glad I could be here. Wow, so cool to see Matt become a Christian. Really, really inspiring. But I noticed that it was prayed afterwards by Jared that he would have 1,000 angels watching over him for the rest of his life. I was like, 1,000? Wow, no one's ever prayed like that for me before. I thought I had like maybe one or two. Matt, he gets 1,000? I don't know. I just thought that was really interesting. Do we all have 1,000 angels watching over us? Really? Wow, that is so cool. I appreciate the kind of comparing me to the Apostle Paul and his tribulations of what he went through and the persecutions he suffered. Of course, I've not suffered the same kind of persecutions even close to what the Apostle Paul has gone through as I've done my ministry. And my ministry is controversial. I've had people protest me. I've had, I've been lied about online and in the press. We've had some people treat us pretty badly. Somebody wanted me to do a lesson on all the persecution I faced. And I was like, I can't do that lesson. I've never been persecuted. I have received some mild opposition, but I've never really been persecuted. But if you want a lesson on mild opposition, I'm your guy. But I've never been, beaten up, stoned, left outside the city, and then had to make my way back in. At least that hasn't happened yet, and I'm hoping it doesn't happen in Gainesville. But so I thought, I would do a lesson today based on this book that you're going to go out and get in a minute here on temptation. And I thought I would talk to you this morning about temptation. I mean, it's one thing that we can all understand and appreciate. We all experience it. And I wish I could stand here today and tell you how easily I find it is to be holy. I wish I could stand here today and tell you that I'm in such control of my mind, in such control of my emotions, in such control of my actions, that I always defeat temptation. But the truth is, I find most days a real battle to do what is right. Now, on most days, I really do actually overcome most temptations. I have my moments when I give in, but I find that, I mostly experience hours and hours of tremendous victory and moments that are weak. So while I don't have my PhD in overcoming temptation, I've at least passed a couple courses on the subject. I know a little bit about what I'm talking about. Of course, the only person who could claim that they lived a perfect life and never sinned was Jesus. And since he wasn't able to come here in person today, you get me, right? But, the first thing I would like to point out is that temptation is not a negative thing. James 1:2-4 says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything." Then down in verse 12, it says this, "Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him." Now, the word trials in that passage can equally be translated into the word temptations. And when you do that, it says this, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face temptations of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance, and perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." You see, the truth about temptation is this. Temptation is as much an occasion for you and I to do the right thing as it is for you and I to do the wrong thing. I'm learning that a temptation is actually a very exciting part of my day. While Satan is using temptation as a weapon of mass destruction in my life, God allows temptation into our lives to develop our spiritual life. Temptation provides that opportunity of choice for us every single day, when we have the choice between doing what is right and what is wrong. We live in a world where you don't really get a lot of choices. I mean, the truth is, we're all kind of boxed in here. You're not allowed to go any speed limit you want. Now, some of you do anyway, but you're not supposed to. You don't get to choose how much taxes you will pay. When you've had a long, hard, tired, and exhausting day at work, and you come home, and you got 3 or 4 kids there, What you want to do is you just want to come into the house, plop down on the couch, and watch something and relax. But you can't do that. Yeah, I know. It's because the kids have the remote. That's number one. You're never going to get that out of their hands. You're just not free to do what you want most of the time. When you're at work, you're not allowed to do just anything you want. We're boxed in by rules and boundaries. But you know what? Temptation provides that opportunity of choice for us every single day, where you actually get to do what you want to do. Every time we overcome temptation and defeat temptation, we become just a little bit more like Jesus. There are few things you will do in your life to become more like Christ than to say no to temptation. And while you will go through many things in a 24-hour period that are no doubt very important, you're all very important people, there are a few things that you will do to show your devotion to Jesus more than overcoming the enticement to sin. It's one of the most important and significant moments of your day. Temptation is a pivotal instant in time when you and you alone have the alternative to do what you want to do based on your own choices. This is your chance to live out your Christianity. It's your moment to decide to be in the light or to wallow in the darkness with you alone. With no church, no minister, no elder, no friend, no mom or dad, no husband or wife, but just you, Jesus, and the devil. And they're all watching to see your declaration to the world about who you have decided to follow. Temptation is a critical and an exciting occasion in your day. It is the decisive moment when you get to put into practice everything you believe, everything that you've been taught, everything that you've experienced with Jesus. We've all been going to church for a lot of years, except Matt. We've all been going to church for a lot of years. I mean, how many sermons have you heard? Good night. I mean, after a while, they all kind of become the same, don't they? Some of you have been coming to church for 30, 40, 50 years. I mean, what is Jared going to say that you didn't hear 40 other times over the last 40 years? You read your Bible. I mean, you go to these Wednesday night events, and you got community events, and you got this going on and that going on, and, holy smokes, you've learned a lot. Well, this is the time to actually put it into practice. During your moment of temptation. It's a key instant in time when God and his angels stop to see whether you will just talk about being a follower of Jesus or whether you will actually walk like Jesus. There will rarely be a more thrilling part of your day than when you're tempted and you have this chance to declare to the spiritual universe who it is you are truly devoted to. Man, isn't that exhilarating? I can't wait for the next temptation. Come on, man, bring it on. The second thing we need to understand is that these temptations and trials are necessary for the Christian. Engineers tell us that the only way that metal can be safely used is after testing it. And it has to exceed the testing requirements repeatedly. Believe it or not, the plane that I'm getting on to go to Louisville next, I really hope, first of all, I'm going to bathe in Purell before I get on that plane. But, while that thing hurls me through the air at 600 miles an hour, in a steel tube at 40,000 feet in the air, I really hope that the metal that we used to make up that plane is pure. Amen. But in order for it to be purified, it had to go through fire. It had to be melted and molded to fit the designer's purpose. And just as metal must be molded, purified, and then tested, we have to be tested before God to see if we can be fit for his purposes. The necessity of trials and temptations, they teach us several things. Temptation is not meant to make us sin, it's meant to make it possible for us not to sin. It's not meant to make you bad, it's actually meant to give you the opportunity to choose to do good. It's not meant to weaken you. God uses it as an opportunity to make you stronger, finer, and purer. Temptation isn't a penalty. Temptation is a privilege for the person undergoing the trial, knowing that they are being strengthened for God's use. The cocoon of the emperor moth is flask-like in shape. To develop into a perfect insect, it must force its way through the neck of the cocoon by hours of intense struggle. Entomologists explain that this pressure to which the moth is subjected is nature's way of forcing a life-giving substance into its wings. Sorrow, suffering, trials, and temptations are wisely designed to grow us into Christ-likeness. The refining and developing processes are oftentimes slow, but through grace, we ultimately emerge triumphant. Romans 12:2 says, "Do not conform any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Our minds are not to be conformed, but transformed. Conform means to adhere to. Transform means to change one's nature. The Greek word for this is where we get our word metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is the same word we use to describe what happens to a caterpillar that changes into a butterfly. What used to inch along the ground in the mud and the dirt can now soar upwards in perfect freedom of flight. And that butterfly, spiritually speaking, is us. After we've been set free from the mud of sinful behavior, slavery, bondage, and the habitual cravings that we used to crawl around in daily. And this metamorphosis makes a total change in our nature. And it's what enables us to be free on a daily basis. Third and finally, we need to plan for success. We plan for everything. We plan our schedules, we plan our schoolwork, we plan how we'll get the job done, we plan what we'll wear and what top matches what skirt, we plan what we'll watch on TV, what we'll record, we plan who we're going to call, we plan who we're going to text, plan what we're going to do on Twitter next, we plan our finances, we plan our spending patterns, we plan our futures, we plan our vacations, we plan our getaways, we plan what movie we want to go to. But for some strange reason, most Christians put no or little thought into the one thing that they absolutely know they're going to face several times in the next 24 hours. How they'll handle temptation. You know, one strategy that I find really helpful is just to do this. When temptation comes, can you just stop for a couple of seconds and consider the consequences? Just stop, pause, consider what you're about to do. You got to stop and think, is this going to be worth it? And remember, no temptation lasts forever. Just hang on for a couple of minutes. You know, I found most temptations go within seconds and sometimes even with a minute or two. And if it's one of those kind of temptations just kind of really hangs on for a while, okay, it might be 5 or 10 minutes. You know, okay, really, really bad ones, maybe it's an hour, but come on. Satan eventually gives up and backs off and waits for a more opportune time. The temptations don't last forever. You can get through this. Just slow down. No, I got to watch this show. No, you don't. No, I just got to look at this website. No, you don't. No, you don't understand. My wife said this, and I just want to have this toothpaste out of the tube moment, and I'm going to yell and scream and slam the door, and it'll cause her to cry, and the kids will be scared, but I just have to do this. No, you don't. Shut your mouth. No, but I'm just a critical person. I'm just always critical. That's just who I am, and so I'm going to be critical. Oh, be quiet. You're critical. Ridiculous. Listen, temptation lasts only for a little while. You've got a brain, you've got the Holy Spirit living inside of you, you've got the power to overcome these temptations. Stop and consider the consequences of what it is that you're about to do. There's always consequences. Satan doesn't want you to think about the consequences. Satan's the greatest salesman in the world. He's always trying to sell us stuff. Right? Drink this, shoot this into your arm, smoke that, look at this website. You know, have this impure thought. Go ahead and give in to your greed or your anger or your selfishness or your prejudices. It'll make you feel better. There's always consequences to this stuff. Stop and consider the consequences of what it is that you're considering to do. There's always small print involved. Satan doesn't want you to hear the small print, read the small print. You ever listen to those ads on the radio or whatever, or it's some TV commercial, and you got this ad, and maybe they're selling insurance or some kind of medicine or something, and then at the end there's like, buy this, and then at the end you got this weird voice, and it goes, you're like, what did that dude just say? Exactly, it's the small print. They don't want you to know what they just said. That's what Satan's constantly doing to us. Always trying to sell us stuff to get us to buy his products, as if somehow these things will improve our lives, make us feel better, make us feel fulfilled and satisfied. But you know what? Sin never works. Right? We always end up being let down. I mean, how many times have you and I given into some kind of sin somewhere, anticipating that it's going to be this great thing, and then you're done and you're like, that was it? And then, you know the amazing thing about us as human beings? We go back and we do it again. And Satan must be like, you people are really interesting. You knew it wasn't going to work. You knew it wasn't going to be that great. I tricked you the first time, and you're actually going again. Huh. No, listen, I'll tell you, as I was living my gay life, when I think back to who I used to be and the life I used to live, man alive, Satan promised so much. The truth is, I wouldn't go back to my old gay life for anything. I had a boyfriend for 10 years. I was involved in the gay community. The truth is, I didn't leave homosexuality when I did because I believed it was so bad. I left homosexuality because somebody was able to prove to me with an open Bible how much better Jesus is. And the truth is, now when I look back with the gift of 20/20 hindsight, Jesus has been able to fulfill me and meet my needs, certainly my relational, physical, spiritual needs, way better than anything I was finding in homosexuality, but he's way better than anything else that Satan is selling. There's no doubt that if you want to live as a Christian, you got to live your life with some boundaries and restraint. It's not the easiest life in the world. But is life easy outside of Jesus? I don't think it is. So if life isn't easy as a non-Christian and life isn't easy as a Christian, isn't it better to do it as a Christian with the Holy Spirit living inside of you, all of your sins forgiven, and the promise of heaven and the community to help you? It makes sense to me. Now, Satan's always trying to sell us stuff. And we just can't buy into it. We've got to stop and consider the consequences of what it is we're doing. Our world tells us the way to dignity is through self-independence. God says, no, the way to dignity is to stand strong through temptation. Our world tells us the way to honor is through self-strength and pride. God says the way to true honor is to be a man or woman of great humility before God and others. Our world tells us to hide our weaknesses. God says, no, confess them freely. In fact, even boast about them to each other. Our world tells us to hide our faults, our flaws, our Achilles heel, and vulnerable points, and tells us they're nothing but full of shame and weakness. God says, no, when you're weak, then you're strong. Our world tells us that to have to rely on God and others for strength is a crutch. God says, no, to rely on him and others for strength is a path to victory. In closing, I would be remiss to not mention the obvious. And, even though I literally wrote the book on how to overcome every temptation in under 60 seconds, the truth is, I haven't had a perfect day yet. I keep trying. Some days I'm like, I think maybe today I had a perfect day. Did I? Let me think through it. I mean, didn't have any lustful thoughts. I didn't yell at the wife. I didn't say any bad words. Oh yeah, there was that guy on the highway that cut me off. Yeah, okay, that one. But I haven't had a perfect day yet. The truth is, I don't understand perfect people. You know where I see perfect people? At church. There's been churches I've gone to, and every Sunday for the last 20 years, I see the same guy. Hey, how you doing? Great. You've been doing great for 20 years. It's not possible to be doing this great. Like, there's never any flaws. There's never any weakness. He never tells me how he's really doing. He's just always doing great. You know those people at church where everything's fantastic all the time and they never tell you what they're really going through? Who are those people? I don't understand perfect people. I don't get those people. You know those people where their hair is always perfect? Their kids are perfect. Their finances are perfect. You know those kinds of people when you get in their car and it's always vacuumed and there's no coffee cups on the floor? Who are you? You know those people when you go to their house and everything's just perfectly clean, all the magazines are nice and straight, and their house smells like candles? You know those people? I don't get you. Actually, that's the way my wife keeps our house. I'm very grateful for that. I don't get perfect people. Listen, Jesus' church is for sick people. We're all a mess. Why don't we just admit it? Quit trying to act like you're perfect. Quit trying to act like, you got everything together. You don't. Listen, if you're a perfect person, if you're not needy, then you don't need Jesus. You came to the wrong place today. This is not a place for the perfect people. This is a place for the people who've got it all messed up and they're just doing everything they can to cling to Jesus. That's what this place is for, right? If you're perfect, you should have stayed home today. That's not what Jesus is for, and that's not what this place is for. So the truth is, in spite of my best efforts, I still sin every day. How do we deal with that reality? I mean, number one, I would say, guys, let's give up on the idea of perfection. None of us are going to do any of this perfectly. Hopefully we'll do it faithfully, but we're not going to do it perfectly. But how do you deal with the reality that you're just going to keep sinning? Well, how do you deal with that reality? Here's an analogy that helps me. Did you know that at the end of the day today, your armpits are going to smell? It's true. In fact, some of you I hugged when you were coming in today, and I want you to know for some of you the process has already begun. But why is it that you scrub up in the morning, you put on deodorant, you do your best to stay clean, but in spite of those efforts, somewhere by mid-afternoon you begin to smell? Do you know why you smell? I'm going to tell you why. It's because of the high temperature that exists within your armpits. Because of that high temperature, bacteria and microbes multiply there by the millions. And they love to live there. And your armpits also secrete oils. Now the oils, they don't have any odor. But what the oils do is that they trap the bacteria and the microbes that live there. And because they're trapped, they can't escape, they can't get out, and they die in your armpits in the millions every single day. You've got the population of the state of Florida dying in your armpits every single day. And it's no wonder there's a little bit of odor there with all of that carnage. On the microbial level, it's the odor of death and decay that gives your body odor. I mean, scrubbing off only works for a little while. Last week's really good shower might have been great for last week, but that's not helping you right now. What's the obvious word picture here? You and I sin daily. I sin all the time. And that sin sticks to me. And I begin to smell. And I can't get rid of the smell by myself. The fact is, last week's really good quiet time isn't going to help me today. Last year's really big victory in my life, or something that I did fantastic for God 20 years ago, that was great for 20 years ago. That's not helping you right now. The reality is I sin so often, several times a day, in fact, that I have to take several spiritual showers to keep clean. Listen, when I wake up in the morning, I've already prepared myself for the simple fact that no matter how hard I try, no matter how much effort I put into it, in the next 18 hours, I will begin to smell the smell of spiritual death. What hope is there for you and I? The only thing that we can do is to practice good spiritual hygiene and go to our high priest who's eager to make us clean. You're not a failure if you begin to smell. It's just what life is like when you walk around in this world. It's going to happen. You can't avoid smelling spiritually. If walking around in this world gets you dirty, then just wash off. Take a spiritual shower, say a prayer, rest in on God's grace, and move on with your life. Why should you be surprised that you began to smell today? We already knew that was going to happen, and so did Jesus. That's why he died for us. You know, a farmer gets up in the morning, and he looks in the mirror, and he's clean. He's got his wife laid out a clean shirt for him. His hair is combed. Everything's nice and clean. He looks in the mirror. Now, he knows he's about to go out into the field for the next 12 hours. And he's not going to try to get dirty. It's not going to be his goal. It's not like he's going to roll around in the mud when he gets out into the field. But it's just not possible to be in the field all day and not get dirty. He knows this while he's going out to the field. So he spends all day out in the field. He works hard. Sure enough, he comes home 12 hours later. He looks in that very same mirror. He's got mud across his forehead. His hair is all disheveled. He's got mud on his shirt and his arms. And he looks in the mirror. He's not surprised. He knew this was going to happen. He doesn't look in the mirror and do this. I can't believe I got dirty again. I'm such a bad farmer. Every day I farm, I get dirty. I think I'll have to fall away from farming. Of course not. He knew that he was going to get dirty. Listen, folks, all he does is take a shower and he gets clean, puts on clean clothes, and he moves on. Christian, you're not a failure if you begin to smell. It's just what happens in this world. And it's what it's like walking around in this world. It's going to happen. You can't avoid it. If walking around in this world gets you dirty, then wash off. The blood of Jesus is big enough to cover every failure, mistake, and sin in your life. With God, you win the race if you finish it, not if you run a perfect race. One day, God will say, well done, good and faithful servant. Not perfect servant, but faithful servant. And he loves you so much as the perfect Father that he would rather have you with all of your problems and issues and dysfunctions and sins and temptations and challenges than not have you at all. The question is, do you have the courage and the strength to follow Jesus in spite of your difficulties, insecurities, and failings? Who will you bow down to? Who will you submit to? Who will you give your life to even when things are difficult, inconvenient, and the suffering is real? Listen, the goal that God has for you is not that you don't have problems. The goal that God has for you is that he wants to be in a relationship with you. He wants you to know him. And God will use the struggles and the weaknesses and the challenges and the temptations and the difficulties to allow that to happen. And then he'll say, I want you to take those weaknesses and I want you to use your mess to go and bless those around you. Temptation is not a bad thing, but rather one of the most exciting moments of your day. Your chance to declare to the world who it is you have decided to follow. It's even necessary, being one of the main reasons and main ways that God will inspire growth in your spiritual life. Temptation should be something that we all learn from and plan for and get ready for. Recognizing that it's coming, get ready. And when it does come, stop and consider the consequences and recognize if you just hang on for a little bit, the temptation will eventually leave you. And when you do sin, because we will, listen, don't beat yourself up. Don't go into the spiritual doghouse. You're not a failure. You're not a loser. Listen, this is exactly what God knew was going to happen. That's why Jesus died for you. What do you need to do? You need to take a spiritual shower. Go back to your spiritual high priest who's eager to make you clean again. Brothers and sisters, I want to say this. I've heard about your transformation as a congregation over the last few years. I've heard about the journey that you've been on. I've heard about the kind of impact you've been trying to have in this community on behalf of Christ. I want to say I find it incredibly inspirational as I've heard what you've been going through, and I really applaud your faith and courage to do all that you're doing as you represent Jesus in this crazy world today. But I want to say what an honor and privilege it has been for Laura and I to not just hear about your faith and courage, but now actually get to see it face to face. We've been very honored to do so. Thank you, and God bless.